In the shadow of a cold, unforgiving gallows, a condemned man made one final request, not for freedom, not for mercy, but to see his dog one last time. What unfolded in those fleeting moments would unravel truths that shook the prison walls and altered the course of justice itself. John Harper sat in his cell, the weight of his sentence pressing down like the iron bars that caged him. He was 42, a man of quiet demeanor, with a life marked by struggle but not by violence, or so he claimed. The jury had decided otherwise. Convicted of a murder he swore he didn't commit, John faced execution in 3 days. His appeals were exhausted, his voice unheard, his fate sealed. But in the stillness of his cell, he clung to one thought. His dog, Rusty, a scruffy mutt who'd been his companion through years of hardship. Rusty was the only living thing John wanted to see before the end. The prison warden, a man named Harold Grayson, was known for his strict adherence to protocol. Grayson had seen countless inmates come and go, their stories blending into a blur of guilt and desperation. John's request, delivered in a handwritten note, caught him off guard. "I don't ask for much," John had written. "Just let me see Rusty one last time. He's all I've got." Grayson read the note twice, his brow furrowing. In his 20 years at the state penitentiary, he'd never encountered a request like this. Most men asked for a priest, a lawyer, or a final meal. A dog. It was unusual but not impossible. Grayson set the note aside, unsure whether to grant it. John's story wasn't unique in its outline. He'd grown up in a small town, worked odd jobs, and lived on the fringes of society. He'd never married, never had kids. Rusty, a stray he'd found shivering in an alley 5 years ago, was his family. The dog had a limp from some old injury, but his loyalty was unshakable. John often said Rusty understood him better than any human ever could. When John was arrested 2 years ago, charged with the murder of a local shopkeeper named Ellen Travis, Rusty was left with a neighbor, Mrs. Clara Dunn. Clara, a widow in her 70s, had taken the dog in without hesitation, sensing John's bond with the animal. The evidence against John was damning, though entirely circumstantial. Ellen Travis had been found dead in her shop, a single gunshot to the chest. A gun registered to John was recovered nearby, wiped clean of prints. Witnesses placed him in the area that night, and his fingerprints were on a cash register in the shop, a place he admitted to visiting earlier that day. John's defense was simple. He'd been set up. He couldn't explain the gun or why someone would frame him. The prosecution painted him as a drifter with a grudge, a man who'd argued with Ellen over an unpaid debt. The jury took 3 hours to convict. In his cell, John didn't dwell on the trial. He thought of Rusty, his warm fur, his eager bark, the way he'd nudge John's hand for a scratch behind the ears. The thought of never seeing him again hurt more than the thought of dying. John's public defender, a young lawyer named Sarah Lynn, had fought hard for him but lacked the resources to dig deeper into the case. She believed John's story, though she couldn't prove it. When she visited him that week, he mentioned Rusty. "If I could just see him," John said, his voice steady but his eyes distant, "I'd be okay with whatever comes next." Sarah took the request to Warden Grayson. She argued that granting it would be a small act of humanity, something to ease John's final days. Grayson was skeptical. The logistics were a headache. Bringing a dog into a maximum security prison wasn't standard procedure. There were security concerns, paperwork, and the risk of public backlash if word got out. But Sarah pressed, citing John's clean record in prison and his lack of prior convictions. Grayson relented, partly out of curiosity. 1 hour, he said. Supervised. No funny business. Clara Dunn was contacted, and she agreed to bring Rusty. She'd kept the dog healthy, though she admitted he'd been listless since John's arrest. "He knows something's wrong," Clara told Sarah over the phone. "He waits by the door every night like John's coming back." The plan was set for the day before the execution. Rusty would be brought to a small visitation room, and John would get his hour. Sarah hoped it would bring him peace. She didn't expect it to change anything. The morning of the visit, the prison was quieter than usual. Guards whispered about the unusual arrangement, some mocking John's request, others oddly moved by it. John was escorted to the visitation room, his hands cuffed, his orange jumpsuit stark against the gray walls. He sat at a metal table, his heart pounding. He hadn't seen Rusty in 2 years. Would the dog even remember him? The door opened and Clara entered,